Okay, we're going to solve radical equations. This seems to be a lot easier for most students than all of those rational exponents are. All right, so we're trying to solve an equation, so we're trying to get the x by itself. And as you can see, our x is stuck underneath a radical sign. So what we got to do is get rid of that radical sign. So if you remember, if you square a radical sign, if you square a square root, it will go away. Because a square root times a square root, remember, gets rid of the radical sign. So we're just going to square both sides. As long as you do it to one side, you got to do it to the other side. So that'll be 2x minus 9 equals 16. Now you have a simple equation to solve. So add 9 and get 2x is equal to 25. So x is equal to 12 and a half. Now you want to check these to make sure that they work. So 12 and a half times 2 is 25, minus 9 is 16. The square root of 16 is 4. So you want to do a real quick check and make sure that it's working. Number 2. Again, square both sides. And we'll get 2x minus 9 equals, now this is negative 1/3, so that would be 1/9. All right, so we're going to add 9 to both sides, so we'll get 2x is equal to 9 and a 9th. Okay, now you're going to divide by 2. Use your calculator. Remember, you can type 9 plus 1/9 to be 9 and a 9th, and then divide it by 2. So 9 plus a 9th divided by 2 gives you 41/9. So let's see if that's the right answer. Take your calculator. You got the 41/9 on there because you just found that. Multiply it by 2. You get 9.11111. Subtract 9. Just keep typing it on your calculator. Don't worry about the decimal. You get 0.11111. Now I need to take the square root of that. So on your calculator you've got 11111. And I want to take the square root of that. To do that on your calculator, simply hit the square root button and then hit second ANS. That's down where the negative sign is. And that'll stick your answer in there, that 0.1111. And that gives you 0.3s, which if you change into a fraction is 1/3, which is not correct because we're supposed to be getting a negative 1/3. So this answer did not work. There's no solution to this problem. The answer didn't work. Now, I could have told you that there was no solution to that problem at the very beginning before I did any of this work. Think about it. Can the square root of anything be equal to a negative number? Can the square root of x be a negative number? And it doesn't have to be an x in here. I could fill anything I want in. But if you think about that, just make up a problem. You're never going to be able to fill anything in here because the square roots are not negative answers. So the square roots are not negative answers. So if you look for that, you won't have to do any work. So that's a real quick shortcut to save yourself some work. All right, number 3. Now, some people would just say, let's square this and square this. Now that's illegal. All right, some people would say square all 3 things. That's illegal. You can't square parts of a problem. You can square sides of a problem. So you could square this whole side and this whole side. That would be illegal. That would also be difficult because in order to square this, you would have to FOIL. So let's keep it easy if we can. If you subtract 9 from both sides, you get the square root of 4x plus 8 is equal to 2. So I would say we have isolated the radical. Check and see, is it equal to a negative? No, so you should get a solution. Square both sides. 4x plus 8 is equal to 4. So 4x is equal to negative 4, and x is equal to negative 1. Check your answer, especially if you get a negative answer. So all you're going to do is plug it in up here. So 4 times negative 1 plus 8 would be negative 4 plus 8, which would be 4. Take the square root of it and get 2. 9 plus 2 is equal to 11. So I'm checking it. If it works, then that's your answer. If it doesn't work, then there's no solution. All right, number 4 is a cube problem. You can still cube both sides of the equation. So you get x minus 1 is equal to 27, add 1 and get 28. Check it. 28 minus 1 is 27. The cube root of 27 is 3. So some of them are easier than others to check. You can just do them in your head. Number 5. Okay, got a radical on both sides. Doesn't change too much. You're going to square both sides. So the radicals will both go away. Now we got to get the x over here and add the 6 over here. X is equal to 9. Check it. 2 times 9 is 18. 18 minus 6 is the square root of 3. Or I'm sorry, the square root of 12. 3 plus 9 is 12, and that's also the square root of 12. So that works. Notice number 6 has a star. Okay? It has a star because it's a special problem. Notice the letter is not under the radical. If that's the case, you do not square both sides. What you're actually going to end up having to do in this problem is factor. Okay, so all of these problems will be done the same. First step is to get the x's on the same side. So 3x minus x root 3 equals negative 5. So rearrange the problem, get the x's on the same side. Take out x. So we'd have x times 3 minus root 3 is equal to negative 5. Now I want to get this x by itself, and this parenthesis is attached to it by multiplication. So I'm going to divide by the parenthesis on both sides. Now the parenthesis happens to have 3 minus root 3 in it. These parentheses will cancel. So I get x is equal to negative 5 over 3 minus root 3. And then I'm reminded that I can't have a radical in the denominator. This is a binomial, so I must multiply by the conjugate. So all the things we've learned earlier we have to remember. That creates a no middle on the bottom, so I'm going to get 9 minus 3. And on the top I'm going to distribute negative 15 minus 5 root 3. Simplify and get negative 15 minus 5 root 3 all over 6. Can you reduce? Not 5, 15, and 6. Nothing goes into all of them, so that is your final answer. Okay, a couple more. That's the tricky one. There's two tricky ones, that one and number 8. Okay, number 7 is just written differently. You could rewrite it as the cubed root of 7n minus 1. Or you can just leave it and we'll work with the fraction. Remember, you always want to isolate the radical part. So I'm going to move the 4 over and divide by the 2. So I have 7n minus 1 to the 1/3 equals 2. Over here you would have the cubed root of 7n minus 1 equals 2, if you did the same thing. Now, if you were on this side, you would cube both sides, correct? That takes care of this cubed root. Well, what I would say is I just want to turn this into a 1. So I'm going to multiply by 3, which is cubing it on both sides. So you see, you're doing the same thing in both problems. Either way, you get 7n minus 1 equals 8. Add 1 and get 9/7. Which isn't a nice answer, so you want to use your calculator to plug it in here, and it works. So that would be our solution. Most of the time, you'll get them when if they don't work, it's because this is a negative, or because you didn't notice that there would be no solution from the beginning. Remember, our square root can't be a negative. All right, well, let's do number 8. 8 is getting a little tricky now. Our letter is underneath. So it's not like number 6 where you're not going to have to square root. You will square root both sides. Okay? It's easiest if your radicals are on opposite sides. So I would move one of them. It doesn't matter which one you move. I'm just going to move the n plus 1. So I've got n plus 3 equals 5 minus the root n plus 1. All you can do is square both sides. So it's going to force us into FOIL. The left side's easy, n plus 2, or n plus 3. Now I've got a FOIL. It'd be beneficial if you remember how to FOIL a parenthesis squared, which we've worked on trying to memorize this formula. You square the first term, you multiply these two and multiply it by 2, and you square the last term. If you don't remember that, then you're going to need to write down the parenthesis twice so that you can FOIL it. I remember the rule. Square the first term, 25. Multiply 5 times this negative square root times 2 is negative 10 times the square root. Now I have to square this last one. When you square a square root, it gets rid of it, but that's a minus. But you're squaring it, so it becomes a plus. N plus 1. Now notice, you still have an n caught under a radical. We're going to have to square both sides again. Now it would be crazy for me to think, let's square this, and have to multiply everything by itself. It's easier to square things when there's not as much on that side. So get everything away from there that you can. Simplify. You'll have n plus 3 equals 26 plus this n minus 10 times n plus 1. So all I do is put the 21, or the 1 with the 25. So I'm going to subtract 26 and I'm going to subtract the n. So these guys would move. Oh, that cancels, so that's nice. So negative 23 is equal to negative 10 times the square root of n plus 1. Divide by negative 10, and we've got, I'm going to move over here, 23 over 10 is equal to n plus 1. Square both sides. Got to get rid of that radical. Well, use your calculator. 23 times 23 is 529 over 100 equals n plus 1. Subtract 1. And you get 429 over 100, which is a messy answer, but that's okay. Now you can check it on your calculator. You can put it in here and see if you get 5. But you definitely want to use your calculator. You won't always get such messy looking answers. It's a process you have to understand. If you have two radicals, and then you have to move one to the other side, so it forces you into foiling, you're going to have to do